Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
So let's see. A guy who has been known to the drive-by media for many years, but let's just say the last 4, has been considered a sleazebag, a shyster, a reprobate, an SOB, just a piece of scum. And that would be Michael Cohen. Today, he is a man of paragon and virtue. Because the one thing that hasn't changed, by the way, greetings and great to have you folks. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network. We're at it for the next 3 hours. The one thing that hasn't changed here, the one thing that all of this is about is forcing Donald Trump out of office because the Democrats lost an election. There are no crimes that have occurred here that involve the President of the United States, starting with Russian collusion, moving on to obstruction of justice, and even this stuff now with the porn stars, Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, and the stuff with Paul Manafort. None of it is going to result in criminal charges against Donald Trump. None of it is going to result in high crimes and misdemeanors. What it's all going to lead to is the forthcoming blistering report from the special counsel Robert Mueller, who remains blind to the actual crimes that have taken place in this entire sordid story. There is clearly now a double standard, a dual system of justice at the highest levels of our Department of Justice. You can see it in the way the DOJ and the FBI exonerated the Democrat presidential candidate when real crimes were taking place for years and years right under their noses, crimes they perhaps even participated in. Those crimes, because they involved a Democrat nominee, were exonerated. The Democrat nominee herself was exonerated. You go to the Trump campaign, the Republican, the opponent, where there aren't any crimes, there wasn't any collusion with Russia, there hasn't been any obstruction of justice, and yet this is where the allegation of crimes is occurring. And it's occurring with people who are peripheral to the original charge of all of this. Russian collusion, stealing the election. What is actually happening now is the losers of the election attempting to steal it back. And that's what all of this yesterday means. It's why it all happened, and it is what it continues to add up to. The people who lost the election simply can't accept it and are doing everything they can to overturn that election result. And what makes it really frightening, and the reason people are losing faith in some of the greatest institutions this country's ever had, leading with the Department of Justice, is because it's plain as day what I just pointed out to you. There is a dual system of justice in this country, and if you're a Democrat, you're going to be exonerated or be given one hell of a benefit of the doubt. If you're a Republican, you're going to be presumed guilty, and a never-ending pursuit to get you will then commence. Look at what we have. We have a special counsel who is actually being positioned by the drive-by media and the Department of Justice as a currently sitting supreme branch of government who has the power to oversee the Trump administration day to day and pronounce whether or not it's fit. That is the role that Robert Mueller has assumed. This is the role the media has justified. This is the role the Department of Justice apparently has justified. This is the image they're trying to create in the minds of as many Americans as possible that Trump is so corrupt that he stole the election, he worked with the Russians, that we need ongoing, everyday oversight of this man and his administration, because we just know that he could not have won that election fairly. And we just know that Hillary could not have lost it. And we just know that we hate Donald Trump more than we've ever hated anybody short of Richard Nixon. And we just know that the American people want us to get rid of Donald Trump. They think that's what the American people want. And so this is the circumstance we're set up with now. So Robert Mueller is indicting every ham sandwich he can find. He is trying to create anti-Trump sentiment. This is the man, again, they keep telling us it has the impeccable honor, more integrity than anybody in Washington, D.C. Why, if there is anyone who is eminently qualified to sit in judgment of the President of the United States on a daily basis, it's Robert Mueller. Well, the big problem with that is, folks, that the Constitution doesn't provide for such oversight by a fourth branch, a supreme branch. The Constitution doesn't provide for there to be a special counsel who basically gets to sit there and investigate anything he wants to investigate involving the President of the United States. I would go so far as to tell you, as a patriotic American and somebody very worried about all of this, Robert Mueller, as I said yesterday, and his team are plowing through the Constitution. They're shredding it as they go. They're leaving it in tatters. Same thing with the presidency. I believe that the assault on our Constitution that is taking place here as a result of this worthless special counsel investigation, I believe all of the politicizing of policy differences that are taking place here, the effort by the losers in the 2016 presidential election to essentially render that election null and void, the effort to overturn the results of that election, everything they've done in connection with that is a far, far greater threat to our country than anything they can cite Paul Manafort having done, or this Cohen character, or Stormy Daniels, or any of these other bit players, Omarosa Manigault, whatever the last name of her husband at the moment happens to be. Yeah, it used to be Omarosa Manigault Stallworth. And then the next thing was Omarosa Manigault. Then it was Omarosa. And then it's Omarosa Manigault Newman. You know who Newman is? Newman is a preacher down in Jacksonville. These two people are apparently their house is deteriorating. It's become a pestilence focus in the neighborhood. Their swimming pool has become a breeding ground for mosquitoes. The town is livid. The neighborhood is. And she married a preacher, bankrupt, having his Buick LeSabre repossessed. Anyway, that's side stuff. I'm serious, folks. I think what is happening here with the Mueller special counsel investigation, this is so fraudulent. It is so, as I told you on previous broadcasts, I've run out of words to describe the outrage that this is. There's literally nothing foundational beneath the Mueller investigation justifying it. These crimes that Mueller is chasing down could have been pursued by any U.S. attorney's office anywhere. And in fact, when the Manafort crimes were first mentioned some years ago, the authorities at the time passed and weren't interested in it. It wasn't big enough to warrant their time and money. But now all that's different because the objective is to get Donald Trump. We have some of the greatest abuses of prosecutorial discretion and power taking place here, the office of the special counsel. And its express purpose is to create, in as wide a swath as they can throughout this country, an anti-Trump mood. Because all of this remains as it was at the beginning, an attempt to drive down Trump's personal approval numbers, to distance his supporters from him, to force Republicans in Congress to abandon him, because these people are replaying Watergate. I was watching TV today. There's Richard Benveniste. I'm surprised he's still alive. He was one of the Watergate prosecutors. You remember him? Richard Benveniste. He's a guy perfectly well-spoken. He never stutters. It probably takes him 4 hours to eat lunch. I mean, he's that slow and precise, and his lunch would be a salad. Like 4 hours to the kind of guy that would send a salad back if it had a thimble too much salad dressing on it. He would measure it. Anyway, he's saying, this is Watergate all over. We've got hush money. We got hush money payments just like Nixon. And, of course, they've dragged out of the cemetery Carl Bernstein to basically say the same thing. But I can show you people who used to work at the Federal Election Commission who will tell you that these payments do not constitute illegal campaign contributions. But the thing about the Cohen, this guy is obviously sleazy. He's obviously scared to death. He's rolled the dice. And, you know, Jonathan Turley has a good point about Manafort and the conviction. He said the conviction that Mueller got in Manafort has actually weakened Mueller's position. Well, because there's no more great damage Mueller can do, but Trump can pardon him. Now that there is a conviction, Manafort is saying this, I made the right move here. I held out. I didn't turn state's evidence. I didn't flip. I'm going to take my medicine for whatever it's worth, and that's going to be a pardon down the road. And the fact that Mueller got his conviction means his leverage with Manafort now is greatly diminished. So goes the theory. Cohen, on the other hand, for whatever reason, decided early on he wasn't going to wait for a pardon. He wasn't going to rely on Trump. He wasn't going to be loyal, whatever. He's going to throw in with the enemies of Trump. He's going to throw in hire Lanny Davis, who does not even try cases, folks. Lanny Davis is the epitome of a television lawyer. He doesn't try cases. So Cohen is not, and his allocution before the judge, the prosecutors wrote it. They're inventing crimes. They're inventing these some of the most comical sounding charges. And you know, the thing about the Cohen side of this is not one of these is ever going to be proven in court. This is another DOJ trick. Which, it's not new. It's something prosecutors have been using, the power they've got, power of lifetime imprisonment, ruining financial fines, whatever. And they have all kinds of leverage over perps, and particularly a guy like Cohen. And so Cohen, in order to get the least punishment possible, both jail time and money, will say whatever they want him to say in his allocution. He'll cop to anything, and he'll do it. And that's who he's thrown in with. And the problem that everybody needs to keep in mind that not one of these charges will ever be tested in court. We'll never find out if this stuff was actually true because we don't even know if Cohen's telling the truth and what he's pleading to here. And the fact that prosecutors do not have to go to court and prove this. So Cohen decided to throw in with the people that scared him the most. And now the stories are that Cohen is begging Lanny Davis to get him a meeting with Mueller. That Cohen can't wait to talk to Mueller. That Cohen's got the goods on Trump and Russia. That's what they're trying to make everybody believe. Cohen has the goods on Trump and Russia. Nobody has the goods on Trump and Russia because there aren't any goods to have. That's what all of this means. What all of this means is that Mr. Mueller, Mr. Integrity, doesn't have diddly squat related to his original purpose, his original reason for existing. They don't have anything. But they still want to overturn the results of the 2016 election. But I'm telling you, folks, what these people are doing to our Constitution, what they're doing to the Department of Justice, what they're doing to these ancillary players is a far, far, far greater crime, and I think far, far greater damage than whatever anybody is accusing Donald Trump of having done, for which nobody has any proof or evidence, even now. And yet, look at what we're being told. They're asking us to believe that Donald Trump represents the clearest present danger to the United States of America. Yep, Donald Trump, the guy whose administration has brought forth an economy that is booming in ways that retailers say they don't remember. Walmart, Home Depot, now Target are all saying that this economy is unlike anything they've ever seen, and they never expected to see it. Because everybody's been conditioned to a nation in stagnation. 8 years of Bush, 8 years of Obama especially, where America in decline was the new standard of belief. And Donald Trump has come in and in less than 2 years has turned all of that upside down. Massive tax cuts resulting in this economic growth. New revenue pouring into Washington via more taxpayers. The tax cuts putting more disposable income in the back pockets of the American family, which is then spending the discretionary income that's driving the economy through the roof. We have record low unemployment. We have record low unemployment in the African American and Hispanic communities. We have the African American presidential approval numbers for Donald Trump at an all-time high. Our military is being rebuilt and re-strengthened and repurposed after 8 years of neglect and disrespect by Barack Obama. We have a president who's doing everything he can, practically single-handedly, to shore up national security, particularly at the borders. We have a president who is deregulating the federal bureaucracy at rates never dreamed of, except in theory and on paper. We have a president who got us out of a deal in Iran that would allow Iran, with $150 billion in cash we paid them, to have a nuclear weapon inside of 10 years. We're out. We're gone. It isn't going to happen. We've had a president pull us out of a phony Paris Climate Accord deal sponsored by the United Nations that was only going to punish the United States economically. We're out. We're done. We have an end to unfair trade deals with Mexico, Canada, China, and the EU. Trump has instituted tariffs that are going to bring our economic opponents to their knees, including the Chi-Coms. Trump has appointed some of the greatest constitutional judges and Supreme Court nominees in the history of our lives. He moved the embassy in Jerusalem, on and on and on and on and on and on. This is what they're trying to tell us poses the greatest, clearest present danger to the country. It's the exact opposite. They've got to stop this good stuff from happening, folks. They cannot let this happen and at the same time say Trump is unqualified and has no business serving. Back here in just a moment. Don't go away. No, that's right. They're trying to set Trump up with this in a lot of different ways. And I got I'm getting a bunch of emails. An email during the break. Rush, you haven't mentioned Molly Tibbetts yet. Oh, you mean that girl out in Iowa? Everybody over at Fox is all upset about. Is that who you mean? That's exactly what was said on MSNBC. Exactly as I just said it is how that came up on MSNBC. Oh, that girl in Iowa that Fox is all consumed with. They didn't want to talk about it. Want to talk about Cohen, want to talk about getting rid of Trump, want to talk about Manafort. When they brought up the fact other illegal immigrant, who, by the way, worked on a Republican-owned farm, some high-ranking Republican official in Iowa. No, it doesn't surprise me a bit. Chamber of Commerce Republicans? No, it doesn't surprise me a bit. Anyway, the illegal immigrant murders her. They find her after a month. And on MSNBC, when the subject comes up, oh, you mean the girl in Iowa that Fox is obsessed with. They don't care about you. They don't care about the little guy. They don't have compassion, as they lie frequently that they do. They're just a bunch of total phonies. Let me